Hello everyone, this is G and I'm back with another video. So first, RJ. It's Saturday, and Saturday is Catterday. Hi RJ, thank you. Oh, he's gonna make me pay for that later. So I hope everyone is doing well. One second. I hope everyone is doing well, and in what seems to be a pattern for me this week, or at least these past few days, I'm doing a video that I didn't think I'd be doing. It's actually an idea that I initially rejected. Now, Sindel's cat, a regular viewer of my channel, hi Sindel, asked me in the comments of a recent video that I did if I was going to sort of revisit the whole Sindel VetCon drama in Mortal Kombat 11 after it's been about a year, right? And I initially said no because I have made several videos about that. Anybody who's been a long-time viewer of my channel knows I have spoken at length and made many videos about that. So I said no, but there was nothing else for me to say about it. But then I ended up seeing the thumbnail for Fourth Snake's video on Jax and the Jax's ending, which was quite controversial, and I did a video about that at the time it came out. And I actually decided that I would approach this topic, but in a different way, because I didn't want to focus on just one thing. That I've already sort of, said everything I could possibly. What in the world? One second. Sorry, as I was saying. I didn't want to focus on one particular piece of drama that I've already said everything I could possibly think to say about it. But I thought it over and I was like, well, maybe I can do sort of like a summary video, right? Sort of giving my thoughts overall on all of that drama because it encompassed many things with Mortal Kombat 11. There were many controversies. Not just Sindel, not just Jax. There were many controversies over the life of the game. I think recently NetherRealm announced that they're like done for like giving it new content or anything, right? So everything that's out there is everything that's out there. Nothing new is coming. So what I thought I would do as best as I can is try to sort of summarize overall sort of my feeling on all of that drama and those controversies in the game as well, right? And I actually think that this image of Jade in her classic MK, not MK3, but Ultimate 3 trilogy costume probably best represents sort of what I think about this. Where, how do I put it? Because this is not Jade's standard costume in the game. Jade's standard costume is this, armored looking thing where she looks more like some sort of like forest elf than uh, Jade in the Mortal Kombat games. Interestingly enough, when she was introduced to Mortal Kombat 2, her stage was the forest stage in MK2, but she never looked like this like woodlands warrior type thing until MK11. But I do think this costume or this image of her is a good depiction of what I think the issue is with MK11. Is that it's trying to have its cake and eat it too. It's trying to appeal to two different, um, I guess you could say, sets of fans or two different types of customers. Your OG fans like myself, those who remember this costume, remember which game it comes from. So we're trying to appeal to older fans because the game leans incredibly heavily and does this very openly on its midway era, mid '90s heyday, right? It makes a lot of open references to the 1995 film, to the point where they brought back Kari Hiroyuki Tagawa to uh, voice Shang Tsung, and he lent his image both as he looked in the film and as he looks now as an older man, for young and old Shang Tsung. They even did three skins from the '95 film in addition to Carrie as Shang Tsung, where they brought back they They gave Raiden the '95 Raiden look, brought back Christopher Lambert to do Raiden's lines. They brought in Lyndon Ashby, who played Johnny in the film, to sort of reprise his role in his skin in the game. And what's her name? Bridget Wilson, I think it is, who played Sonya in the movie back in the mid 1990s. They brought her back in to play Sonya for the '95 skin. So it's leaning very heavily on its mid '90s heyday. But it kept embracing and, in my opinion, forcing these very controversial, divisive, woke ideas, such as the toned down costumes, on to players. And it's like, you cannot have both, right? The series as it was and the series as it is cannot coexist. You have to pick a lane, you have to pick a struggle. You're either going to embrace your roots, you're going to embrace the very controversial '90s edge, blood and sex appeal approach that made you famous, that got you attention, or you're going to up the violence but then tone down the sex appeal because you have a bunch of Puritans on the internet, right? You have to choose one. You're either going to be woke and progressive, or you're going to embrace your 1990s origins. It's one or the other. You can't have both. And they tried so hard throughout the life of this series with so many creative decisions that they made that they were trying to have both. In fact, I remember when the game first came out, because the game came out in 2019, one of the first big controversies was the costume controversy, where you saw Jade's costume and you saw Kitana's costume. Kitana's costume is in MK11 is awful in my opinion. It doesn't look like anything a warrior would wear. It doesn't even look like anything a fighter would wear. It basically looks like a very bland workout outfit, right? But they justified it at the time. Steve Baran, right, who's the art director, who's been with the company since the Midway days, so well over a decade. He justified toning down the costumes, right, moving away from images like this, right, moving away from styles like this, by saying that, oh, it was offensive, that it was offensive toward women, that they had evolved, and they had moved on past stuff like this type of costume, right? Famously saying that, oh, women don't fight in bikinis, which, yes, they don't. They fight in bra tops and boy shorts. If you've ever seen the UFC, right? So there's that. So they doubled down and tripled down and quadrupled down. Only in the end, around 2 years later, or maybe a year and a half or so, I think it was last August, they come out with what they call the Femme Fatale skin pack, which I think is the final skin pack for the women, bringing back the mid '90s era costumes. This costume is straight out of MK Trilogy. I know, I had that game. I still have the original Mortal Kombat. I was there. This is literally what I grew up on. This is what they said they were leaving in the past, that they were moving on from. And then they brought it back. Most likely due to the prolonged fan outcry and fan outrage. But I think it highlights exactly what I mean. They made a lot of divisive and controversial, I should say, creative decisions based on modern day sensitivities, which is something that back in the day they totally disregarded. They didn't care who was offended, right? But they made so many creative decisions, in particular the way women looked in the game, right? Many of the female characters uh, got very, for Mortal Kombat, very modest um, costumes. Even Shiva, and I made several videos about this, right? If you've never seen Shiva in the older Mortal Kombat games, Shiva basically, you think this is showing skin, Shiva's worse. Shiva literally fights in just a red thong bikini in Mortal Kombat 3, and then what is it? She was brought back for what was it? Deadly Alliance or Deception, one of the last few games of the 3D era. And then when they brought her back in the soft reboot MK9, she was in her classic MK3 costume. Then, after years of Shiva's look being set, when they reintroduced her in Mortal Kombat 11, she's got on like a full suit of armor. It's like, why? She's a Shokan. They don't wear armor. Their muscles are their armor. That's why they don't wear armor. But that's the type of thing that I mean. They made, for me, I can't speak for anyone else, but for me, they made so many decisions that made no sense from a continuity perspective. Sindel being a huge example of that, right? To appease the woke crowd, the progressive crowd that have always sort of dogged them either because of the violence of the series or the sexy costumes for the women, right? Accusing them of misogyny and all this other stuff. In my opinion, I think this entry was probably the most misogynist they've ever been toward women because they played respectability politics, and for me personally, I have no respect for respectability politics, right? But then, despite taking that hardline stance, what did they do? They brought back an element, a visual element. The very visual element they were denouncing, they bring back, right? It's like, whichever way you are going to go, right? Choose it and stick with it. It's this is gonna sound weird given the type of game that I'm talking about, but it reminds me of a verse in the Bible, right? Let your yes mean yes, and your no mean no. Pick a struggle and stick with it. Do not tell people in interviews or in tweets and whatnot again and again and again and again and again and again and again that this type of costume that you see here is obscene and it's disrespectful, right? And then after years of complaints, right, or well over a year of complaints, cave and go, hey, we're actually bringing back the very thing that we said was offensive. Pick a struggle. And personally, I say, pick this. This is what brought you to the dance, right? Violence and sex appeal. You may want to stick with that. But there's that. Then there was the fact that this game very poorly tried to touch upon racial issues and social issues. Jax's ending, of course, being the most egregious, right? Because again, it violated canon. Not just canon from the old school, not just canon from the original series, but even canon from MK9 and 10, right? Jax was never the sort of black freedom fighter, if that makes any sense, right? He was always a proud American. He works for the U.S. Army. Well, the Special Forces, right? He's a major, right? He's always been a proud American. Sure, he's always been, a strong black man. He's always been depicted as that. But the way he has been depicted throughout both versions, the original timeline and the new timeline, was that he was a proud American serving his country. Race is present, obviously, but it was never a huge factor in his motivations, right? He didn't fight for the black people only. He fought for America. Great, in a greater sense, he fought for Earthrealm, right? And then in his ending, they basically allow him to mess with time, admittedly, in the ending, over and over and over and over and over again, until he gets the world that he wants, which just breaks all types of storytelling, right? one of the core tenets of storytelling is that everything must have a price, good or bad. You cannot have your cake and eat it too. That was reflected, for example, in Jackie's ending. For those who don't follow the newer games, Jackie is Jack's daughter, right? She tries to turn back time so that her dad never loses his flesh arms, right? But because she changes that, she changes the course of events that cause Jackson to meet his wife and get married, and so she never comes to be. So you were willing to follow that rule about how you change one thing, you change everything, and the poor girl accidentally eliminates herself. But when it comes to Jax, your social posturing, your virtue signaling, is so important that you violate not only the character in how he's been traditionally depicted and understood, but you violate storytelling conventions. For what? Wakanda forever? Leave that to Marvel. Okay? There's nothing wrong with Jax wanting a better world, right? For not just Africans or African Americans, but for everybody. That was never the issue. The issue is that they boil the character down to black man when he's never been that. It would have been like taking Scorpion, who's a ninja, right? Who's a Japanese ninja, whose motivation has always been about either restoring his family that he lost or restoring his ninja clan, and now suddenly making him want to reverse the bombings in the U.S. bombing Hiroshima and Nagasaki in World War II because Japanese. That's not how these characters work or function, right? Scorpion's a ninja, right? That's what he is. His motivation's always been very local for him. It's his family, it's his ninja clan, right? Outside of that, he don't really care. It would be insane to all of a sudden, have him be the Japanese freedom fighter and try to reverse what the U.S. did in World War II because Japanese. Because as we would see later with sadly real world events, the Stop Asian Hate thing because of the Asian hate crimes going up and all that, right? But the only character that an ending similar to Jax's would possibly work with is Nightwolf, because Nightwolf's always been defined by the fact that he's Native American, which annoys me personally, but he's always been a stereotype and a caricature. And I accept that. I don't like it, but I accept it, right? But they didn't give that to Nightwolf. They gave it to Jax, right? And it just made no sense. They threw away any sort of continuity, any sort of just making a lick of sense for posturing. And that's what bugs me about it, right? That's the problem, one of the many problems with wokeness. For a series to be woke, it must atone for the sins of its past, right? And the only way to atone for the sins of the past is to completely throw out the past and act like it never happened, and then make decisions that don't even make sense in the current version of your work. So there's that. And then, and then we get to Sindel, which may be the most egregious and offensive issue, I think, for me anyway. And Fourth Snake, if you've ever seen his videos. For those who are not too familiar or don't follow, I'll try to summarize it. Queen Sindel, traditionally throughout the Mortal Kombat franchise, is depicted as a good person. She has this very dark, scream queen, gothic appearance, but she's truly good underneath, right? She was introduced in Mortal Kombat 3, and the basic story is she was the queen of Edenia. Edenia lost their Mortal Kombat series. Shao Kahn takes over. He kills her husband. He takes her as a wife, adopts her daughter, Princess Kitana. Sindel, out of grief, commits suicide, right? 10,000 years later, during the events of Mortal Kombat 3, Shao Kahn resurrects her on Earth so that he can have justification to invade Earth and merge the realms because Outworld did not win Mortal Kombat 2, right? So it's like the first MK tournament takes place on Earth, more or less on Shang Tsung's island. Second tournament's in Outworld. Third tournament's back on Earth, and it's a merger because it's technically an invasion, right? He's just Khan's just disregarding all the rules, and he's using uh, Sindel's resurrection on Earth to justify his invasion of Earth, despite not having won Mortal Kombat. So she's resurrected. She's brainwashed. She's depicted initially as a evil character, and then in her ending in the third game or in trilogy, and in Kitana's ending, it's revealed that it was actually brainwashing. She's not evil, right? Her depictions in the games she would appear in later on were more or less that she's the good queen, wife, mother. She would actually save Kitana in her ending in MK Deception, right? So that's pretty much how it plays out more or less in the original series of games. When they did the reboot for MK9 back in 2011, they more or less kept it the same. The big change was that uh, instead of committing suicide, her death was now a noble sacrifice, and she somehow put a ward around Earth. One wonders why she didn't do that for her own people back when they lost Mortal Kombat, but okay. But she gets resurrected. She's resurrected to be evil. The story changes in MK10, where Sindel is. She ends up killing several of the good guy characters, including her own daughter, because again, she's mind controlled. But Nightwolf kills her in a self sacrifice, and so she dies never having been free from the brainwashing. So, when she's brought back in MK11, one would think that they would pick up her story from there, right? That she's more or less a brainwashed zombie. Because MK11 does feature the undead, the Revenant versions of Jade, Liu, Kitana, those who were murdered in that, in MK10, in MK10, right? MKX. No, no. This version of Sindel has no connection to the original version or even this newer one. Now all of a sudden she's an evil queen. She's an evil cougar queen who's all about her privilege. This is a term that was literally used to describe her by Warner Brothers, right? More or less that she sold out her world, sold out her husband, her entire family, her entire damned realm, right? For privilege. And that power is the only thing she truly loves. And fans, especially older fans like myself and Fourth Snake, we hit the roof. We hit the roof. And Fourth Snake made several videos about it, very good videos. And to make a long story short, I made a lot of videos, probably to the point of annoyance for my longtime audience. And despite all of the outcry, NetherRealm double, triple, and quadrupled down on this, right? They even more or less confirmed it when they released the DLC Aftermath, which confirms that Sindel's always been evil, right? This was their retcon. They didn't want to call it a retcon. They did a combat cast where Stephanie Brownback says, "Oh, it's not a retcon. It's the real lore. It's the way she's always been." No, no, it's not. It's a retcon, right? But the justification that they gave for this retcon was that it was supposed to be empowering, right? Dominic Gianciolo said that he had to choose either between the good wife, queen, and mother. And for those who don't know, Gianciolo's like the lead story guy and voice director and all that. It was him mainly and Sean Kittleson who made a lot of the story-based creative changes, right? So he says, well, she can either be the evil queen, which is what they ultimately went with, or the good wife and mother, and they went full on evil queen for no reason. He was saying that he couldn't choose both. Many people pointed out that the person who created the character, John Tobias, literally corrupted her and redeemed her in the same damn game. Right? But to make a long story short, they just doubled down and said that she was evil, and we were supposed to believe that this was somehow empowering because now she's this ruthless woman, right, who just does everything for the sake of power, right? We're supposed to believe that this is a mature, respectful depiction of a woman, right? Making her evil for no reason, making her hate her daughter for no reason, making her a traitor to her husband and her world for no reason. But we're supposed to believe this is a respectful depiction, an empowering depiction of a woman. It's like if Ed Boon or anybody still working in NetherRealm has ever wondered why some people think they have issues with women, this is why. You took a woman who was good and made her evil for absolutely no reason, and then you want us to believe that this change is somehow empowering. It's not. If you needed a villainous Sindel, make a new character. You made a new character in Scarlet. You couldn't make another new character. You made a new character in Cetrion. You couldn't make a new character. Chronica is a new character. But you couldn't make a new character here. You had to ruin one you already had. For what? For what? How was this empowering? You still haven't answered that question after 2 years. How the hell was this empowering? Right? Or, not just the Sindel drama, but also Shiva. All of a sudden, Shiva has become queen. Okay, fine, I can accept that. Shiva being queen of the Shokan. But now all of a sudden she is sexist. Why? How in the world does this help the character or help the depiction and representation of women in the series to make the Shokan warrior your definitive, defining Shokan warrior, because Goro is dead in this game, a raging sexist for no reason? Like, why? Again, that's just the thing. It's just a one giant why. But why, though? This is what I mean. This is what happens when wokeness becomes just when your work becomes infected with wokeness, or maybe the better term is that when your priorities are warped, when you're no longer concerned about, would this make sense in the story for the character to do this? Right? It's like they made all of these changes without thinking about how fans would respond, and without even questioning their own motivations as to why they were doing this. Right? Whether it's relatively simple stuff like, for some reason, Kitana being Asian after never being Asian for over 20 years. All of a sudden now she's Asian. What? Why? Because she's dating Lu? She's been dating Lu since freaking Mortal Kombat 2. Who the heck cared? But all of a sudden now, she has to be Asian for no reason. Keep in mind, they didn't change Sindel's appearance, which is actually quite different than the way she looked in older games, which made her look vaguely Asian, because the original actress who portrayed her in MK3, I believe, is Filipino. So this actually would have been a perfect reason if you were going to change Kitana, and later on when they finally brought in Melina, if you were going to make them Asian out of the blue, you can at least make their mother, right, Asian, to establish, that they're family and there's that visual connection. But she still looks like, an old white woman at the bar who doesn't realize that the 80s are over. Right? So they never thought about that. It's like, it's just those type of things. It's like, did you guys even think about how this would look or whether this would make sense? It's like, why wasn't there someone in the creative in those meetings asking these questions. Or perhaps there was, and nobody listened to that person, or that person got kicked out. Whatever it was, I wish they had listened. I wish they had listened to fans. I wish they had listened to maybe the one sensible person working in the company who went, but why though? Because it would have saved a lot of drama. Because ultimately, they ended up caving, at least partially. They brought the older, supposedly sexist costumes back, as I mentioned earlier. They brought back Melina, who I think never should have been left out of the series in the first place. Although, interestingly enough, when they brought back Melina, they gave her this very anime-esque, generic Kunoichi costume. I'm like, Melina's old. Ever since 3 and on, Melina shows skin. So you give her a modest costume. It's like, again, do you understand your own work anymore, NetherRealm? Do you understand your own product? Do you know what the hell you're making? Because I don't think you know anymore. You're trying to tone down elements that you think are offensive to modern day sensibilities, but the moment that you start losing the older fan base, you bring those back, right? You piss off the older fan base with your changes, right? But then you go, wait, you're leaving. You can't do that. Here, costume. See, here, right? Oh, look, you want DLC characters. Oh, look, we have Rambo. We have RoboCop. Come back, please. No, no. Now, maybe the DLC. I'm indifferent. The only DLC character that I thought really made sense was Spawn. Spawn feels like he fits in Mortal Kombat. But outside of that, I'm indifferent on DLC characters, right? That are not related to the series itself. A lot of the DLC characters were characters from the Mortal Kombat universe, but the ones outside of it, right? But I can only speak for myself, but I'm not impressed by that type of thing. What I want is a cohesive Mortal Kombat game, a cohesive Mortal Kombat story, right? If you cannot give me that, then you have lost me. Now, who knows what's going to happen with MK12? That's years off in the future. They may totally use that to just retcon MK11 out of existence, right? They may try to retcon Chronica out. They may use that to address the Sindel retcon, or they may leave it. Who knows? At this point, I honestly don't care. I honestly don't care anymore because this is not the Mortal Kombat series I grew up with. I've never agreed with the idea of a reboot anyway. In my opinion, it just should have ended with Armageddon like it was originally supposed to. But if you can't even be loyal and consistent with your own reboot modern day story, right? Then really, why should I care? Why should I be invested? Why should I invest time? Why should I invest money? Especially the money, right? These games ain't cheap. If you're just gonna change everything with the next entry, right? Mortal Kombat is in an identity crisis. It is trying to please two groups. You can't do that. You cannot, to quote the Bible again, interestingly enough, you cannot serve two masters. You're either going to serve the master of your older MK loving player base, people like myself, or you're going to obey the masters of modern day sensibilities who look at this type of costume and think it's obscene. Choose one. Choose that master and then make all of your creative decisions consistently under it. but stop trying to play this game where you try to sort of walk the line in between both, because it's not working. Because guess what? While this may make older fans like myself happy to see again, I think this is a beautiful render, right? All those woke fans, right? Now they're upset because they feel like you betrayed them, right? Older fans like myself felt betrayed with the, let's say, standard design for Jade and MK11, and now the Wokies feel betrayed by this, classic MK3 trilogy era version of Jade. So now you have two sides that feel like you screwed them over with the same damn character all over a costume, right? So again, as I've said several times, pick a struggle, pick one, and then be consistent with it, right? Be consistent with it. I would hope that they would choose people, say, leaning more toward myself or Fourth Snake, but in the end, still, they've got to pick. They've got to choose. Because this whole walking the line, trying to play to your 90s heyday, but also make your game acceptable to the more modest and Puritan sensibilities of 2021 or 2019 ain't working. They are two different time periods that are not compatible. You are a franchise that made its name off of offending people, off of taking social norms and concerns and giving it the finger. So you're either going to stay with that or you're going to bend the knee. Choose already, right? Give us a stone cold salute or bend the knee. Either way, make a choice and stick with it. But anyway, that's the video. Please let me know what you think, and I will see you all in the next one. Have a good day night wherever you are. Bye.